Read Naturally can be a really nice program for reading interventions. It can be used for grades 1 through 8. It can be used in regular class instruction or as a specific intervention in like an RTI program, or it can be used in special education as an intervention or as sort of a data tracking and basically just reading fluency program. The reason why it's so nice is because when you look at some of these samples, the way that students work through it, if you look at what happens in this, is that students have a bunch of like prediction tasks that they're doing before they read this story. Then they go through and they read through the story in what's known as the cold read, where they're going to be reading through it. They're going to be timed. Maybe they have a minute, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever, to read through this. Teacher's going to keep track of how many words they got right and how many total words there are. Then there's going to be some data tracking where kids can see how they are doing on this story, and that's going to come in handy later. Then there's a bunch of interventions, and this can look a lot of different ways depending on the teacher, the time, the student, where they're at, how long they've done this before. But there's going to be some sort of like a read along where they're going to read along with their teacher. They're going to practice. They're going to have some questions about it, basically just some sort of instruction around this story. And then they're going to go and they're going to read this again in this, what they call pass, and what some would call the hot read, where you're warmed up and you're ready to go. Then they're going to have some more graphing that they're going to do with that, where they can see the progress that they've made from the hot read to the cold read. And you can see some of this tracking going on in this picture here. And so that's really how this program works. It's super effective. It's really based off of good research. And what the stories look like, look at some of the sample stories. This would be on a pretty basic reading level. We have this set up right here. We've got our pre-reading instruction. Then we've got the cold read, and we can track the words that are read and how many errors there were through this. Then we have some of the other questions and things that would go along with comprehending the reading. The tough part about this is that if you look at how they track this, a lot of it is done paper pencil. They do have a live product, but with the Encore, a lot of their basic assessments are done on paper. And so what I tried to do was build a way to enter the student data using a Google form and a Google Sheet, so that we would be able to put in this data using our Google form, and then we would be able to have this show up on a dashboard where teachers can customize this to whatever they need to use it for tracking in either progress reports or in IEPs or in conferences or in meetings. If it's in our own spreadsheet, we can really have a lot of customization that goes along with this. So you can see that up here, we wanted to be able to pull 3 trials of this student's reports, and then we wanted to be able to take the accuracy of the cold read percentage, how many the percentage of words they got right on that cold read, and then also take the hot read, the one after instruction, and then also take the average of those, because when we're reporting on like a progress report or an IEP, probably not going to just use one trial, the latest one. We're probably going to use something that is more of an average, showing over time how they're doing on that book level. We can also change depending on the book level that they read. This one they've only read one time, and so we take the average of that, which is the average of 1. We can also choose the different students. So as we add more students in here, we would have more data showing this, and this could be customized so that it wasn't just showing 3 times that they read this. It would maybe show 5 or 4 or 2 or whatever it is. So I am going to clear this out, and I'm going to show how to build this Read Naturally data tracker with the Google form and with the Google Sheets, so we can build this dashboard. Alright, so the first thing that I do is I build a new Google form. We're just starting this up. And the first question that I'm going to have is the student name. And the reason why I'm not going to leave this open for a short answer is so that I have the exact same spelling, the exact same punctuation, the exact same spacing anytime this student name is selected. So because we're building this once, we would go through and put in all of our students' names into this form so that they could then be chosen. This isn't where we're assessing this student. This is just where either a special education teacher, a paraprofessional, or actually the student could input their data into this Google form. So it doesn't have to be like it's not going to be a quiz. It's just a place for us to put this data in. I'm going to make it a drop down so that it doesn't take up as much space. I'm going to make it required. Then my next question is going to be, what book level was being read? And in this one, again, I'm going to put in my options. Let's put in those ones right there, so that they are the exact same every time. We don't want to have, somebody puts in 1.0 one time and then the next time somebody puts in just 1 with not 0.0, because that's not going to work out right. Now we've got to put in our information that they're going to be adding. First one is how many words were correct on the cold read, and we're going to make this a short answer. And this is going to be, let's use response validation here to make sure that this is a number. I'm going to copy this so that I can use it in the next one. So that's going to just check to make sure that we have a number in there. Cold read, how many words total is our next one. And let's make this same thing. Oops, is number. And then let's put hot read. How many words are correct? Go to response validation is number. Same thing there. And I'm just going to assume that the amount of time that we're using is going to be the same for all of these. Let's go is number here. Okay, so we're sitting good there. That's all the data that I'm going to collect. I just want to know cold read, how many words they get correct, how many words total, how many words correct, and total from the hot read. And then I'm going to use these to take those percentages. What did we get for a percentage on the cold read? Settings, I actually don't want to make this a quiz because, again, it's not something that's being graded. It's just data that we're inputting. We just want to put it into our spreadsheet. I don't need to collect email addresses because it's probably the same person putting it in every time. It doesn't really matter who puts it in. Any of this stuff, don't really need to know. So now I'm going to create a new spreadsheet from this right there. Okay, and so now I've got my form responses feeding into a spreadsheet. I can test this out just to make sure. Can say, let's say Justin took this, he got 1.0, he got 35 out of 37, he got 48 out of 50 on his hot read. Then we can submit that data, and we can see our data showing up in our form responses. So good. So now we're going to be going through and making a couple of extra sheets where we can calculate the data and then build our dashboard. So I'm going to go through and fill in some more data into our form and into our spreadsheet so we have more to work with as we're building this, and then we'll be right back. All right, so I went through and added some more data in here. Really, the whole idea of this form is that either the teacher or the student or the paraprofessional could enter in this data so that it's all in one place. As long as we get this data entered in through our form, you could send even this entry view of the form to a paraprofessional, have them save it on their iPad or their computer, and then they would be able to enter that data whenever a student was taking the read naturally. So they could log that. Once it's in our spreadsheet, now we can pretty much do whatever we want with it. And that's the nice part of tracking this on our own. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make another sheet to do my calculations here. The problem with doing calculations, if I was going to go like cold read %, and I was going to do this formula in here where I took the total cold read, or the cold read correct divided by the total cold read here, and then did this across all of them, this would be nice. But then when I add another response to this form, it's not going to work for that. Or it didn't work when I tested it out. So let's see how this looks. Yeah, see right here is the one that I just added. You can see how the way Google Forms works is it just plugs a row into here. And so this is a blank cell, and so we don't want that. So I'm actually not going to be able to use that form here. So I have to pull all this data over onto this form. I'm going to name this calculations. So this is going to be just a query of all of this data, and I'm going to go across. See how it says A1 to G28? I'm going to get rid of that 28 on the G, so that it's going to continue to pull data even after we add more on our form responses. Now I want select all the data. I even want to pull the timestamp over. Select all the data where there is a student name in there. So I'm going to say where B is not equal to an empty string. And I believe I can go double quotes here. And we want one row for headings. Well, let's see how this works. Whoops. Try it again. Select all the data where B is not equal to. That looked like it works better. Okay, so select all of the data. That's what the star means. Select all of the data where B, column B, this student name, is not empty. So that's the data that I want to pull over. So right now, it's pulling all of my student data over, and that's perfectly fine with me. Now what I can do is, because there's nothing in here, in this cell, and it's only going to add down to the bottom, or it might add up to the top, but it's not going to delete everything in the cell, I can have my cold read accuracy here. So I can go equals my cold read write divided by my total number of words on the cold read. Then I can autofill all the way down, and I'm actually going to take this formula and I'm going to hold down Command Shift all the way down, and then I'm going to go Command D, and that would be Control D on a Windows computer, so that we can drag this all the way down. I want to make this look a little nicer by clicking the column and then going to %. And yeah, sure, let's go here. Okay, now we're going to do hot read equals hot read words correct divided by the total hot read score. And we are going to not do that. We're going to go Command Shift down and Command D to drag that all the way down. Now I'm going to select I, and I'm going to have this be a % with 1 decimal place. Okay, so now I've got my cold read and my hot read accuracy percentage, which is nice. That's exactly what I wanted. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to build my dashboard. So I can build this. This is where the trickier queries come from. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to have my student name, and I'm going to go data validation. I'm going to click enter a range, click in this box, and then I'm going to go to my calculations, and I'm going to select all of the students, and I'm going to go from B2, where this first student is, all the way down B, so that as more students get added to this column, it'll still validate based off of them. Then I'm going to click save. I'm going to go over to dashboard, and I should be able to see all of my students that have data in here. And we can test to see if this works. If I add a new student, their name should show up right there, and their name should show up right here. So it is working. One thing to note is that I can edit anything I want to on this form responses sheet, but I can't edit anything on this. I don't know if this would, I suppose since there's nothing being written over that, but if I go here, that's going to cause an issue because now my query is trying to overwrite. So I can edit anything I want to on this form responses sheet. Okay, and now Mark is not in my list anymore. So now what I want to do is I'm going to build a query right here to pull student data based off of the student's name. So let's go right here. My query is I am going to pull all of this data all the way down through I, and I'm going to select all of the data where my student name, column B, is equal to, and this is going to be based off of this right here. And so when I'm writing something that's dependent on a cell in my query, I need to do this. Double quotes, double quotes, double quotes, 3 of them, and sign, then the cell that I want this query to be dependent on. It's triple, double quote, double quote, double quote, and sign, cell, and sign, double quote, double quote, double quote, and then I can add in anything else. I actually want to add something else into my query here. I'm going to order by column A because that's the date, so I want the most recent date to come up first. So let's go order by A, and I believe that would be ascending. Nope, descending. So now my most recent one is up first. Okay, so we've got, this is working. All of Justin's data is showing up there. All of Mitch's data is showing up there. We're sitting good. Now I can also take this and I can, if I don't want to see all of this data, I am going to have a dependency where I'm going to select a certain book level that's being attempted here. But I can also do something like this where I'm limiting 3 and I'm only getting the most 3 or the three entries that fit with this criteria. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make this dependent also on a book level. That's going to take a little bit of extra stuff going on out here because we're going to have to filter our data. So what I want to do is I want to pull up all of the book levels that this student has attempted from my calculations tab here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a formula called sort. And that's going to be sort, filter. Actually, no, we want to filter first. Filter, and I'm going to filter my student's book level. So that's this C column. I want to filter and get rid of some of these book levels, or actually I should say only pull certain book levels. If I look at what my filter is letting me do, the first one is the range, the data to be filtered, and so this is the data that I want to show up in my dashboard, and so that's going to be the first part of my function here. Then I'm going to have a condition that I'm going to check to see whether or not this data should get pulled. So I'm going to go into my function here, and I'm going to have my condition low on battery. Where'd I go? Right here. My condition is going to be if this B column equals A2, which is my cell that my student is in over in my dashboard. So if this cell equals whatever that student's name is, then I want to pull the book level for that test. Let's go here. Oops. And we are good there. Let's just see what it's saying to me. That actually worked out good. There was no error on that. Okay, and then so this looks kind of hodgepodgey, not too great. So we want to just sort. I'm going to add this sort, and let's look at what this is telling us to do. The range is the data to be sorted. Well, that's the data that we just pulled. My sort column is the only column that's there, and we want this to be ascending, so we're going to go true. So what this ended up doing was, you can see what it looks like right here. We want to sort this data that we pulled, which was a filtered data set. We wanted to sort it based off of the one column, the only column that was there, and we wanted this to be ascending, which is true. So now we've got all of our book levels that Justin has attempted showing up on this right hand side, and it should work with all of our kids here. Now, just to make this a little bit nicer, this is what I like to do with this. I like to use the unique function where I'm going to go, my range is going to be all the way down this, and it's just going to pull each value that's used once. So now instead of having 2, 2, 2.5, 2.5, 3.5, I only have this book levels here. So now I still need to have this here, but what I can do is I can either white it out, or I could make the whole thing black as long as my text was black, whatever I really wanted to do. But now I've got my book levels for these students right here. So now I can make my query dependent on those book levels. So I'm going to go to data validation, and I'm going to validate based off of the book levels that this student has taken. So I'm going to go all the way down the J column. I could also do this based off of right there. So now I will have available to me the book levels that this student has attempted, and not any other ones, because if I tried, for Justin I had 3.0, I wouldn't have anything show up in my dashboard. Oops, we might need to adjust this a little bit. Sure, and I could write like data underneath here if I wanted to be careful. So I've got my book level, and now I want to write my query dependent on also this book level. And so I'm going to add where B equals this student, and my column is C equals, and I believe this one should be different. This would be A5, and let me look quick. Double quotes. These ones here are double quotes. Okay, so now it's not only dependent on the student name, but it's also dependent on the book level that they're attempting. So we're only going to have that certain book level. So what this looks like is in C, my column C right here equals this double quote and A5 and double quote. I'm ordering by the timestamp, and I'm limiting 3 options in this. The reason why I had a limit of 3 is because a lot of times when we're taking the average of our students' performance, we'll take 3 of them. I could have this be, no limit, and it would show every time that they've taken this assessment. And so we'd have 5, and then I could build my dashboard and just take the average of the top 3. That would be fine too. Either way is going to work out fine. So now I can go and build the dashboard here of kind of my calculations, and this is where it becomes really helpful to have our own data in our own spreadsheet, is that we can analyze this data however we want to. If we want to pull the max, we can have the max show up in our dashboard. If we want to pull the min, we could do that. If we want to do median, we could do that. If we want to do average, which is what I'm going to do, we could do that. So I'm just going to copy over some of this formatting here from my other sheet, and we'll go through how to write this up. Okay, and it doesn't look great, but it'll be fine. Okay, so the average, what I'm thinking here is I want to know the average cold read words per minute that they can actually read for this book level and this student. And then I want to know the average hot read words that they can read per minute. And then I want to know the accuracy. And I'm just going to do this on the latest 3 trials so that when I'm writing my progress report, I can just go and grab this data and put in there. So this is going to be equals average, and my cold read words per minute, I'm just going to highlight the top 3. Go right here, and then I've got that data average hot read words per minute right here. Now I can go average cold read accuracy, those 3. Average hot read accuracy is right here. Okay, so there's my dashboard. This should work out. Where now, if I have a student, anytime I want to see how they've done, I can see the highest book level they've attempted. I can also see their cold read accuracy, their hot read accuracy, their cold read words per minute, and their hot read words per minute. And it should make it really nice and easy for me to track their data over time. So let's say Thomas is going to go, and he took this assessment. Thomas, he took 2.5. I didn't have 3. I just wrote 3.5 in there. It wasn't even an option. Let's go 2.5. So Thomas took this at 2.5, and he did really well. He had 99 out of 100 on his cold read, and he had 123 out of 125 on his hot read. We add that, and that shows up. So we've got this one right here. Luckily, I had my other dates as actually being further in the future than today, but we have Thomas's data showing up here, and it would affect his cold read words per minute, jack that thing right up. and so on. So it should work over time. And again, you could just send this to a paraprofessional, save it on your computer, have the students track it. That would be another way of doing that. Now, one other thing that I could do, so that's kind of the end of the dashboard part, but I just thought this would be fun, like while I was building this, that it would be kind of fun to try to build a graph for it. So I'm actually going to move this data down so I have room to put in my graphs here. I could have the graphs go above the data, but I don't really like to do that. So I'm going to try to build a graph that that shows the cold and hot read data on the same graph and has the timestamp being the x-axis here. So I'm going to go to edit chart, and I made this line chart. I went through and tried to do it, and I got stuck with a little labeling issue. So I'm back. I got it figured out now. Here's what we want to do with this graph. I want to go to my x-axis, and I'm going to add in my x-axis as being my timestamp here. And so I'm going to get rid of this, go down. My x-axis is the A column. I want to add a series. This is my y-axis. One of my y-axes, I guess my ranges, my data that's going in as a y-axis is going to be my cold read, my total words per minute of my cold read. It could be cold read accuracy, I guess, too, but I think the words per minute is probably going to look better in a graph. And my next series, as I add another one, is my hot read. So I'm going to get rid of the numbers there. And so now I've got my hot read. And I did add this data in there with the label, so that's probably why that looks the way that it does. Now as I'm going through and customizing, I can go through and I can look at my series, and this is how I got the point shapes, where if I wanted to change these to like diamonds, stars, or X's, or whatever I wanted to do, circle, and I made them 7-point just because I guess 2-point looks pretty good. So that's how we get our graph to look that way. And then all I did to find these labels, because actually when I did this the first time, my hot read data showed up as blue and my cold read showed up as red, and that was really frustrating. So I just double click on this little key here, and that shows cold read that way. Good, good. So that's how I can make my graph. And I believe this should work for other students. There has to be data in the graph, so we can see that Thomas's went down over time, but that's because we had this 99. So let's see what his 3.5 looks like. Okay, not a whole lot of change, but we can see that his cold read is definitely better than his hot read, pretty much across the board. And we can see that Mitch is improving on 1.5, going down a bit on 2, and has only taken 2.5. Oh, he's taken it twice, but it was the exact same score both times, so it doesn't show up any differently on there. So a fun little part that we can add onto this this read naturally data tracking. So that is how we make a form that can track our read naturally data, how we build a dashboard, and then how we link that up to a graph that'll show that data over time.